The moment Ethan Ward stepped onto the plane with his little son's tiny hand wrapped around his fingers, he already felt the weight of 100 exhausted glances. But nothing cut deeper than the cold smirk from the sharply dressed man in seat 4A. A man who would soon regret every word he was about to say. Ethan had barely buckled in when his son Leo, wide-eyed and curious, asked a little too loudly if airplanes could touch the stars. Before Ethan could gently quiet him, the man in 4A shifted dramatically, sighing as though his entire world had been disturbed. "Great," the CEO muttered. "A crying kid and a babysitter dad. Just what I needed." Ethan swallowed the sting, choosing silence. He was used to judgment, used to assumptions, used to people thinking a young single father was irresponsible, unprepared, or a burden. What they didn't know was that Ethan had once lived a life that required more discipline, bravery, and focus than most would ever understand. And he had walked away from it all for the little boy sitting beside him. The plane lifted gracefully into the sky. The CEO continued muttering complaints about the food, the temperature, the noise level, the parenting skills on display. Ethan kept Leo occupied, calm and smiling, choosing patience over pride. But 2 hours into the flight, the cabin lights flickered. Sudden turbulence jolted the aircraft so sharply that drinks spilled and passengers gasped. A voice crackled through the speakers, this time shaky, tense, and nothing like the calm captain's tone from earlier. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is an urgent request. If there is any former or current fighter pilot on board, please make yourself known to the crew immediately." Silence fell like ice. Passengers exchanged confused and frightened looks. Flight attendants rushed toward the cockpit, whispering frantically. The CEO, pale now, turned stiffly toward Ethan. Why would they need a fighter pilot? He demanded nervously. But Ethan wasn't looking at him. He was staring at Leo, steadying him, reassuring him, before quietly unbuckling. A flight attendant spotted him. "Sir, do you have experience?" Ethan nodded once. "I do." The transformation in the attendant's face, fear shifting to hope, made several passengers gasp. Even the CEO stared in disbelief. "You," he sputtered. "You're a pilot." Ethan didn't answer. He was already being escorted toward the cockpit. When the door closed behind him, the cabin erupted with murmurs. The CEO's arrogance seemed to crumble into panic. He had mocked the very man the entire plane now depended on. Inside the cockpit, the situation was worse than Ethan expected. The co-pilot was unconscious. The captain was struggling, sweating, pale, and trying desperately to stabilize a malfunctioning system while turbulence tossed the jet around like a toy. Ethan stepped in, voice calm, posture steady, like he had never left the skies. "Captain, I've got controls." The captain's relief was immediate. "Thank God. What's your experience?" "Former U.S. Air Force fighter pilot," Ethan replied, sliding into the co-pilot's seat. "Call sign Falcon." He might have been a single father now, but muscle memory didn't care about life chapters. His hands moved with precision. His instincts sharpened. And for the first time in years, the sky felt like home. In the cabin, announcements were brief and cryptic, but enough for everyone to understand that the plane was in trouble. The CEO placed his head in his hands, shaking. "I mocked him," he whispered to a nearby passenger. "The man saving our lives. I mocked him. After 30 of the longest minutes imaginable, the plane finally broke through the turbulence. The ground came into view. Ethan guided the aircraft toward the runway with flawless control. The touchdown was smooth, so smooth that several people burst into tears from sheer relief. When Ethan emerged from the cockpit, the entire cabin rose to its feet. Applause thundered through the aircraft. Strangers reached out to shake his hand. Some hugged Leo, telling him his dad was a hero. But the CEO, who had insulted him, judged him, and dismissed him, stood frozen, unable to lift his eyes. Finally, he approached Ethan slowly, his voice trembling. "I owe you my life," he said quietly, "and an apology. I misjudged you. I misjudged what strength looks like." Ethan didn't gloat. He didn't rub salt in the wound. He simply lifted his son into his arms and said, "Strength isn't loud. It's patient." The CEO swallowed hard, tears building. "If you ever need anything, anything at all, please contact me. I want to help you and your boy." Ethan nodded politely but didn't promise anything. Some gestures were simply meant to heal the giver, not reward them. As the passengers filed out, many stopped to thank him again. But the moment that stayed with Ethan forever was when little Leo tugged his sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, does this mean you can still fly?" Ethan smiled, kissing his son's forehead. "Yeah, buddy. I can fly anytime you need me to." And as they stepped into the bright, warm daylight, hand in hand, Ethan realized something profound. Sometimes the world underestimates the quiet ones. Sometimes kindness rises where pride falls. And sometimes the people judged the harshest are the very ones keeping others safe without ever seeking recognition. The CEO walked behind them, humbled, changed, and painfully aware of how easily we misjudge the heroes sitting right beside us. And somewhere in that busy airport, the sound of applause still echoed. Not for a pilot, not for a single dad, but for a man who chose humility over ego and courage over bitterness.